Dust is the minute debris of a world in perpetual disintegration. A cascade of plant, mineral, and cosmic dust. Living beings, past and present. Our own decomposition is constantly raining down upon us. Dust relentlessly covers everything with a fine layer of gauze. It is the visible sediment of time. It is also the bane of housewives. Invented a century ago, the vacuum cleaner is the emblematic machine of modern comfort and industrial design. It was the first electrical appliance to be produced for mass consumption. The Hoover 150 was designed by Henry Dreyfuss for the Hoover Company in 1934. It is an example of the first specifically American style created to make the mass-produced object desirable. The archaic yet magic broom, for to deal with dust is to travel through time, would change into a vacuum cleaner, and witches would be turned into perfect homemakers. Industrial society was made possible by steam power, which was vanquished by electricity, and we could start dreaming of automatic cleaning. As this dark, effervescent era came to a close, the slow but inexorable process of hooking up the modern household began. Gas, electricity, water, sewers, telephone. Progress was on the move in a swiftly changing world. Our vacuum cleaner was born in the America of the 30s, which represented the modern world. Yet this America, fascinated by speed, was stuck in an economic slump and desperately looking for ways to get business rolling again. Little did it imagine that a decisive catalyst would come from a new aesthetic style, the first in its history, the streamlined style. The trend was towards leaving the overgrown cities for an airy, comfortable house in the suburbs. The modern woman no longer had any maids, but reigned over a host of domestic appliances, led by the vacuum cleaner that helped her keep a neat and tidy home. Henry Dreyfuss designed the Hoover Model 150. He was an industrial designer who worked closely with engineers, which contributed to the success of his company. He invented the legendary American Bell telephone and was Hoover's first aesthetic designer. This honest, highly cultivated man, who designed everything from household appliances to locomotives, greatly influenced industrial design around the world. Born in 1904 in New York, he studied with Norman Bel Geddes and started out as a stage designer. A man of many styles and a visionary, he combined streamlined design with functionalist rationalism. Henry Dreyfuss initiated the idea of the designer label by inscribing his name on some of his models. While European designers were artists and architects, their American counterparts were advertising executives, decorators, fashion illustrators, businessmen. They were featured on the covers of financial magazines. The 1939 New York World's Fair, the World of Tomorrow, brought worldwide recognition to American designers. It triumphantly showcased streamlined design and architecture, a style which could shape an entire city of the future. It confirmed the reputation of Henry Dreyfuss, who, along with Norman Bel Geddes, explored the infinite spaces of democracy and urban life. A water drop is the generic streamlined shape. Streamlining emerged from research on fluid mechanics, movement through air or water, and from the new modes of transportation at the dawn of the 20th century. Between this old aluminum Hoover vacuum cleaner and its younger sibling, the 150, there's a few years' difference, but above all, there is a designer. Henry Dreyfuss literally streamlined this machine, the first and most aerodynamic model he designed for Hoover. The metal skin covering the mechanical workings has sleek lines produced by the new die casting techniques. Everything contributes to the fluidity of the design. It was the first household appliance to use magnesium, which is 1/3 lighter than aluminum. It was the first Hoover to have a Bakelite hood. The vacuum cleaner's ancestors were a motley crew of wild and often extravagant inventions. They came in all shapes and sizes and employed all kinds of techniques, from the sweeping machine to the hand-pumped suction sweeper. The inventor, however, of the object and its name, the vacuum cleaner, was Hubert Cecil Booth. In 1901, this British engineer received the first vacuum cleaner patent for a massive machine which vacuumed from out in the street via long tubes that were fed through the windows. With 15 of his machines, Booth was able to curb an epidemic in London by vacuuming round the clock for 2 weeks. Hygiene and vacuum cleaners thus became permanently linked. With the belief that eliminating dust also eliminates germs, and thus illnesses, the vacuum cleaner became a must in every household, the only way to clean the carpets in the homes of the well-to-do. The Hoover adventure began in 1907 when an American janitor, James Murray Spangler, invented the first efficient portable vacuum cleaner that ran on electricity. Spangler, who suffered from asthma aggravated by his job, hygiene once again, combined a radically simplified device with a suction technique, and the modern vacuum cleaner was born. He teamed up with William Boss Hoover to patent the invention and start mass-producing it. A tin box, an electric motor, a fan, a broom handle, and a pillowcase were the components of the first easy-to-operate vacuum cleaner. Founded in 1908, the Hoover Company sold vacuum cleaners with an aluminum frame and a lighter motor than the prototype, eventually weighing 4 kilos as opposed to the 15 to 20 kilo machines of the competitors. They heralded the age of modern electric house cleaning and became so popular that the name Hoover replaced the name vacuum cleaner for American consumers.
The completed field coils then join the other parts of the motor, now nearing completion. And here at last they come together. We see the armature being placed in position and the top half of the motor casing. The ventilation fan for cooling the motor is spun on. Now we see the bearing assemblies being screwed down on the multi-air driver turntable. Finally, the motor has the suction fan and insulated pulley set for vibration and silence. We return to the die for the main casting, which has now been heat treated. And finally, it goes into this die casting machine where it shapes the molten metal forced into it under high pressure.
Since the invention of the vacuum cleaner, every technique has been used to lighten up the materials, from metal, cast aluminum, and magnesium to plastic, which would soon be used for everything except the motor and the basic mechanical workings. Moreover, as suction power increased, noise levels would continue to decrease, reaching about 80 decibels.
The agitator, distinguishing feature of the Hoover cleaner, is added.
Gradually, the object would become lighter, quieter, cheaper, enabling Hoover to say in the 40s that the vacuum cleaner would be part of everyone's American dream.
It has to offer a barrier to the finest dust while allowing the air to penetrate.
It wasn't until the 50s that the cloth bags gave way to paper bags. And it was in the 80s that automatic cord rewinders and electronic speed control made their appearance. A vacuum cleaner is made up of a vacuum chamber, which encloses a fan turned by an electric motor, and an intake port where the dust-laden air is pulled in and then flows out through a bag that filters the air but retains the dust particles. The Hoover 150 is a vacuum cleaner with a beater bar. It added a special beating rod that dislodged the dirt from rugs and carpets while vacuuming. This rotating brush is called the agitator. For the next few decades, materials and shapes continued to evolve, while the basic functions remained the same. At the time of the Hoover 150, vacuum cleaners came in 3 versions that put together the same components in different ways. The canister or cylinder type, invented in 1912 by Electrolux, had everything in the tank, which was mounted on runners and later on wheels. The stick or broom type, easier to maneuver with everything on the handle. And the upright type for carpets, which contained the operating system in the cleaner head.
The streamlined train getting up speed. The theme song is Speed. Now for a quick one, and make it fast, for this is Speed. The new streamlined train is burning up the tracks on the Union Pacific.
It was a time when people liked their vacuum cleaners to imitate the great trains of the day, reflecting their power and fluidity. Henry Dreyfuss streamlined his vacuum cleaners to look like his locomotives. The resemblance between these machines could even be found in the lights featured on Hoover vacuum cleaners. They were designed by the same designer for 20 years, from the first model up to those of the 50s. Were they intended for housewives who vacuumed with their eyes closed? or who went after dust under the bed at night in the bedroom. The American economy was recovering, but during World War II, Hoover stopped making vacuum cleaners and turned to aiding the war effort. Similarity of shapes and procedures. Production lines and molding presses were modified to produce helmets, while sewing machines were used to produce parachutes. Anthropometry refers to the systematic measurement of the human body. The use of anthropometric techniques spread during the late 40s, at a time when research done during the war was being made public. Henry Dreyfuss made a name for himself as a pioneer and a theoretician in this area. His studies contributed to making anthropometry an important element in the design of everyday objects, and his theories have proved to be extremely valuable for developers of useful shapes. The designer of our vacuum cleaner created two typical human models, Joe and Josephine, as a basis for establishing his universal standards. He put them into all kinds of positions and situations in order to try out ideas, design objects, and to draw up his ergonomic charts. The Hoover 150 was designed to be as maneuverable as possible, from the grip on the handle to the amount of pressure for the button. Everything was conceived in order to help this overburdened but modern homemaker gain a few precious seconds. Hand positions, joint angles, limb rotation, range of movement were analyzed in detail in order to find the right proportions, the perfect fit. Every inch of this vacuum cleaner is functional. The indicator shows that the dust bag is full. The weave of the bag is porous enough to let air through, but tight enough to retain any particles. And even though it's as easy as ABC, the bag isn't emptied every day, which is a good thing since the contents would reveal a lot about our private lives and the bizarre bestiary of dry creatures that take up quarters with us, like dust mites. We live with machines whose basic principle is the wind. The wind suggests aerodynamics, speed, and thus modernity. Our vacuum cleaner has a twofold connection with the wind, via its fluid, streamlined lines designed to make it glide through the air and through its air-sucking function. The parallel is rather strange. A cleaning device designed to emulate a racing car, to simulate high-speed dynamics. For although the vacuum cleaner takes in air in order to expel it, and the wind passes through it like a jet engine, it is only to transport dust. In Europe, the massive use of domestic appliances would not become widespread until the electrical power supply to households was increased. In France, for example, not until the 1960s.
Make it snappy. Come on, everybody. Men, you are about to embark upon careers which I hope and truly believe will be the turning points in your lives. And now, what is the greatest vacuum cleaner on the market today?
American movies, always quick to incorporate the latest social trends and events, found a new victim, the vacuum cleaner salesman.
And to help
While the sellers were always men, the customers were always women, who had the unfortunate reputation of being easy prey, as long as the right etiquette was observed. Door-to-door peddling was also a way of encouraging installment buying, a credit system that, in the United States, provided financial underpinning for the mass production of everything from vacuum cleaners to automobiles. The vacuum cleaner is a true indoor vehicle, the ranger that patrols and looks after our floors. Not even the tiniest, the remotest nook or cranny can escape this dust inhaler, this particle trapper, this dirt sucker. It's become one of those machines we can't do without, associated with the passing of time, like electric shavers or lawnmowers. Hair and grass never stop growing, and dust never stops settling. Housework has not changed significantly since the 40s, whether in terms of the nature of the chores or their distribution. Sociologists have divided them into 3 categories: female tasks, male tasks, and finally, negotiable tasks. Certain common tasks which could even include vacuuming. But despite what we may think, certain stereotypes are hard to get rid of. In the 50s, the entire planet set out to conquer space. And in the domestic space, the Hoover Company came out with another innovation, the Constellation vacuum cleaner, nicknamed the Sputnik, that hovered above the floor like any other spacecraft on Earth. Meanwhile, in the arts space, pop art was on the rise, and little Sputnik participated in the movement's founding work. Fortunately, dust isn't everyone's worst enemy. It has also been praised and appreciated by poets and artists. Well, everyone has their preferences, whether it's the nitty-gritty of the matter or the allure of the object that is exalted. Vacuuming inspires. In the 90s, the European division of Hoover became Italian, but the priorities remained the same: functionality and aesthetics. The electronic age had begun, and many domestic appliances were incorporating a blend of high-tech and design. Tropical depression systems, such as cyclones, begin to be of interest for new vacuum cleaner technologies. The cyclone vacuum produces a cylindrical airstream that subjects dirt particles to a centrifugal force. This extracts them from the air and they fall. No filter is needed. Hoover patented its disposable bags in 1955, and 30 years later, the British designer-engineer James Dyson did away with them altogether. The new transparent look reveals the technology at work. The aesthetics are scientific, associated with NASA space vehicles and intelligent robotics. The obsession with hygiene turns these machines into weapons of destruction. After 2001, in the odyssey of domestic space, the vacuum cleaners of the future will be self-propelled and outfitted with sensors and memory. Automatic cleaning is no longer just a dream. And to top it all off, these strange devices promise to be intelligent, attentive, self-sufficient, and above all, friendly. There's even talk of DNA or genes for these new families of machines. But can we really eliminate the evidence of passing time when from dust we come and to dust we return? And it will only have to be vacuumed up all over again.